What's up, members of the High Magisteria, blue-collar Quen workers, and citizens of Tehran? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files Podcast, the podcast that wastes hours of your life that you're never getting back. We are your co-hosts, Spencer and Sam, and we're here to discuss a very popular book by M.L. Wang, Blood Over Brighthaven. As always, links to our socials like Twitter and Discord are linked down below in the description, and down there you'll also find a link to support us on Patreon if you'd like to. You can watch these episodes live as we record them and see them way before anybody on YouTube gets to. And you know, it helps support the channel and pays for things like StreamYard and Adobe Premiere and all those things that kind of cost money each month to use. But other than that, liking and subscribing helps the channel. That is more than enough for us. So thank you for doing that. If you're here, we hope you have a great discussion with us. Let's talk about Blood Over Brighthaven. What we're going to do is we're going to do a small spoiler-free review for you guys, just because this is kind of a newer book. It's a standalone book. And so I figured we'd kind of just get into a brief synopsis and kind of give you a couple thoughts on the, just how we felt about the book as a whole. Sam, welcome back. It's been a few weeks since I've been here.
Yeah, sorry. It's like a busy time of year, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. I think we noticed before the stream that the tagline under your name was from the Dungeon Crawler Carl episode, yeah. Which was like, it feels like so long ago now.
So long ago. It feels so long ago.
Oh, well, you just finished reading Blood Over Brighthaven literally like a minute before we got on StreamYard officially. Yeah. And having it so fresh in your head. I mean, I finished it this morning too, but it was my reread. So given that it's your first read, you just finished it, what are your what's your temperature on the book? Obviously no spoilers, but just what are your general thoughts?
I mean, I liked it. I thought the plot was really good, and interesting. It definitely has kind of that, it's like all based around morality in a way, like what you find moral, what you can live with, what makes a person good, what makes a person bad, what makes you reach the gates of heaven versus the gates of hell is kind of like an overarching theme throughout the whole book. I love anything that's a magical academy in a way, which I found really interesting. The way that they use magic was also really interesting. I'd never really read another book that used magic in the way that it's used in these books. So I enjoyed it. I give it like a 4 out of 5 or like a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, that's fair. Now you mention Magic Academy. I don't think I would call this like dark academia or anything, right? Like, would you classify it as that? Because I didn't really get that vibe.
Well, the thing about the book, and this isn't giving anything away, is it's at the end of all of her training in a school. Right. It starts out when she's about to go take this test to see if she's going to pass. But yeah, I don't think I would really call it dark academia. Because I would think almost more like dark academia is like Hellbent or like Night House. You know what I mean? And that's not what I would consider this.
Yeah, there's not really like a secret society or anything. It's just an elite society. So basically, for everybody watching, what's going on in this book is it starts out with this guy and his friends. You don't really know quite what's going on yet, but his name is Tommy or Tommel, and he is running across a frozen lake. Meanwhile, this thing that's almost kind of like a lightning strike is coming down, and it's called the Blight. And anytime it touches anything, whether it be like a human or a deer or a plant, it completely unravels them. And it's like this super brutal way of dying. It's like super, super painful. And it seems to come down at random. And it's happening on this lake. And they're trying to, this frozen lake, and they're trying to get across to the city of Tehran. And it's known as like Brighthaven. It's got this big shield around it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like this one city in the middle of all of this kind of apocalyptic wasteland. It's almost like an 1800s apocalyptic story in a way, because like all of the technology and everything is very steampunk, but everything outside the city is like kind of a wasteland. And
It's like the Stone Age versus, you know,
yeah,
futuristic, and they're in the same world,
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that was a great opening scene of the book. It's really great, and it kind of immediately tells you like what this book is going to be about.
yes, and I would say it's very important for that first scene to really make you go, "Oh my God." Like when you see the lightning hit somebody, it describes it in such vivid detail, and you're just like, "Oh my God, that sounds like the worst thing that could possibly happen." And the funny thing is, the rest of the book isn't really like that. Like, there's not a lot of like gore, and there's not even really a lot of action necessarily. Um, but I think it's really, really important for the first scene in the book to set the stage. This is what the blight is, and this is kind of what people are fighting against. This is kind of like the main reason why we have this city that is this haven.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so they go from there. A lot of them die, and Tommy gets inside the city with Kara, this baby. Um, and he is kind of instantly mistreated. He's like stepped on and told that he either has to work or he's going to be thrown back out. And so he's like, no, no, I'll work. And then we get like quite a bit of a time jump.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to meet Siona Freinen, who is basically obviously she's a lady, and she is trying to become a full mage. Now she's studied her entire life for this, it's her life's work to become a full mage. The thing is that women, there has never been like a full mage that has been a woman. This is a very like male dominated thing. They actually go out of their way to keep women out of this. And I know what a lot of you are thinking right now. You're like, oh, is this going to be like a girl boss book? Is there going to be a lot of like, social politics in this? And as to the girl boss thing, I would say no. Like, I would say, like, Siona is not like a Mary Sue kind of character where she can like instantly do everything super well. She certainly has her talents, but I would say the book almost paints her in like a bad light. Like she kind of feels like a bad person for like the first half of the book.
Um, well, I think it's more. I can't put enough emphasis on the fact that this is a male dominated society, and they have no
Yes.
issue at any time saying like, well, you're a woman, so
Right.
no wonder you can't do this, and women shouldn't be a part of this and that, and yada yada yada. So
But I also, real quick, I also didn't feel like the book was smashing me over the head with social politics, though. I really felt like this was like this world, and the author isn't necessarily being like, pushing their politics down my throat. It felt very true to this world. It felt very true to the story. And I don't know, did you get that same vibe or no?
I mean, I never even thought of it as like the author trying to like push anything politically, down my throat, but I just in general get very annoyed with books where it's like the only reason someone can't do something is because they're a woman. That just like pisses me off. But
Sure.
I mean, you have to imagine what she has gone through to get where she even is at being given the chance to become a full mage,
Correct. Yeah.
and what it's taken to get there, what she's had to give up, what she's had to go through, with people treating her. And so I think her actions are pretty justified throughout the whole book, with how people continue to even treat her throughout it. I would probably react the same way. So I mean, I don't think it's a girl boss in any way, because I don't
Hmm.
think she's someone who's like, oh, they were mean to me. F off. I'll show you. Because she gets pretty emotional through a lot of the book,
Yeah.
Like, it takes its toll on her. It's not easy for her in any way. So,
She feels like a real person that has grown up in this environment and is a product of it, but is also trying to rise above it. Like
mhm,
she felt like, oh, in this particular circumstance, this is the human that you would get if you know
absolutely.
bred them in this environment, to, for lack of better phrasing. Like, this is the kind of person that would grow up in this.
And I think to like hit a point home is that, you know, as she's going to be tested and could potentially be the first female full mage, you have to imagine in this world where no woman has ever done
Right.
this before. If she fails, okay, she's just another in a line of women who have failed. Or if she passes, then she has, everyone's looking at her as kind of like the trend set. I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out like how to word it correctly, where it's just, if she does pass, then she can't mess it up, because if she does, then they're going to say, see, look, women shouldn't have done this.
Yes, and they do that throughout the entire book. Like, see,
Mm-hmm.
this is why we don't have like women mages, is because they can't handle this thing, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And it's kind of like every she's so under a microscope, where they try to test her and push her and make her do all these things. And we even see that with Tommy. Not going too far into the book to spoil anything, we're still near the beginning, but basically she is given this assistant, and we find out that it is Tommy, the guy from the beginning of the book, and he's a Quen, which is basically anybody outside of Tehran, or Brighthaven. Um, and they are like the super low class, like blue collar workers, like treated like dirt. They live in like kind of the slums and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And she's supposed to have a mage's assistant, someone who is educated and can help her with her spell work. And they're like, well, we're gonna give you the janitor, Tommy. And the during that time, the book is kind of telling you, they're waiting for a reaction. They're waiting to see if she acts like hysterical, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, so that they can be like, oh, we knew that a woman couldn't handle this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so everything is kind of set up for her to fail, except for like a couple people that are in her corner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and basically, kind of finishing up the synopsis part of this, is that she gets this assistant, Tommy, and they kind of go to work on various spell work. She has to like bring him up to speed on how to be a mage's assistant. And I can't get into too much else without giving away big parts of
Mm-hmm.
the book, but one of the things that they're trying to do is expand the barrier of Tehran to make it like,
Bigger.
bigger, to increase the size of their city that can be protected. Um, and so that's kind of like the synopsis. There's a lot of other stuff that happens that, if I were to get into it, it would be giving a lot of good stuff away.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know about the different politics at play, the different like relationships and hierarchy, and all that kind of stuff. And it was really intriguing. I really enjoyed the world building of this world. What did you think of that? Just kind of the way this city works, and like, did you feel like it was explained pretty well?
I feel like it was explained pretty well, without it over explaining it in any way either, to the point where you're like, okay, I get it, you know. The author did a really good job jumping around to the different kind of areas that are in Brighthaven, you know, so you can
Hmm.
kind of see the differences between where certain types live.
Yeah.
It's pretty stark differences. You know, a main thing is that there's power outages occasionally through the day, when
Hmm.
certain, like, for lack of a better word, generators have to be swapped and whatnot. And
Right.
the people who are from Brighthaven originally don't really ever lose their power, but the Quen, there's always go out all the time, sometimes for days at a time, you know? So you definitely, it's in your face what the differences are depending on who you are, where you were born. And the fact
Right.
that you kind of lump anyone who's an outsider, you know, they call them all Quen, when
Yeah.
really they're all kind of the last surviving of their own, like, tribes and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it was really interesting. I think the author did a really good job with that.
Yeah, for sure. There was some like distinct differences, even in like the accents between people that come
Hmm.
from different tribes and stuff,
Yeah.
which was really neat. There's also some romance in this book, and I really liked it. I felt like there was not too much nor too little. It is by no means a romantasy or anything like that. But I just really like there was kind of like a slow burn romance. Without getting into too many spoilers, just did you like this? Yes or no?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it played honestly much of a part, to be honest. I think it was very small. Um,
Okay.
but I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that it wasn't the focus or even like the subplot really of the book.
Oh, interesting. See,
Yeah.
we'll have to talk about it in
Yeah.
spoilers. Okay. Um, yeah, so we talked about the way it tackles social issues, and then the last note that I have here really is there is some amazing twists and turns. There is a specific part of the book where I had to pause it and rewind
Mm.
because I was like my audiobook, because I was like, oh my God, wait, does this mean what I think it means? And I had to go back and kind of like reread that section because I was like, oh my God, this is this. And, you kind of connect these two things and it's like, oh my God. Um, so yeah, I loved the twists and turns without giving too much away.
I mean, I thought the twist was really great, but do you remember when I texted you last night and I was like, "Did you finish the book?" And you were like, "Well, I'm rereading, but I'm almost
Yeah,
done." And
yeah,
I've been texting you because I wanted to say something about that.
okay.
I had guessed that's what it was, and I wanted to throw it at you before I found out. And
Oh, nice.
um, I think by the time you texted me, I'd gotten in bed already, so I didn't get to. But
Okay.
it's not common for me. It's
Yeah.
uncommon for me to kind of get things. And when we get to the spoiler section, um, I think I remember what it was that made me think I knew what it was, and we could talk about that because yeah, I actually did for once again guess what it was.
Nice. Congrats. That's awesome. Yeah, that was a twist that took me by complete surprise. I did
Yeah.
not think that that's where we were
Really?
going at
Oh, I
all.
did.
Yeah.
I gotta remember what it was. I think I wrote it down.
So great. And then last thing I'll say is the narrator. Did you did the audiobook partly, right?
Yeah, yeah, I really liked the narrator. She reminded me of one of the voices from what's that vampire one that you had me listen to? The free Audible
Oh,
one?
Impact Winter.
Yeah, it sounded like that girl from there for some reason.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was really well done. I think that maybe I just don't read that many audiobooks that have a female narrator, but I don't think that I found too many that I was like, "Oh, this lady is doing like an amazing job."
Mhm.
But with this one I was like, "Wow, I was like really, really impressed by her narration, and the only reason I
Yeah.
say that, the previous thing is because I feel like, sometimes, and men have the same problem in the opposite way, but I think it's hard for women to do convincing male protagonist voices, and it's hard for male narrators to do convincing, female voices. And I was just so impressed. Like, her voice for Tommel sounded so convincing.
Yeah, she
And
did a good job.
I was like, man, this is really, really, really good.
I looked her up. I even looked at her IMDb. I wanted to see if it was the same girl from that vampire thing, and it wasn't. So
okay, yeah. So
I thought the same thing. I was like, I really enjoyed her voice. It was pleasant to listen to.
For sure.
And I've had narrators ruin series for me. The narrator for Fourth Wing absolutely ruined.
Oh my God.
I was okay with the series. Book 1 was good. 2 was okay. On the reread, I didn't like it because I listened to it and the narrator made Violet so annoying to me that I was like, I don't even want to read these books anymore. I've had the 3rd book that came out months ago forever now, and I still haven't read it.
Yeah. Oh, so you haven't read that yet?
No. Because
wow.
the last time it like really made me hate it. And when I physically read it now, I hear her voice in my head.
That's so great. Well, this narrator was Moira Quirk, and she was fantastic. So props to her.
She was.
All right, guys. So yeah, solid recommend for me. You said it was about 3.5 to 4 out of 5. For me, for me, it's a 5 out of 5. Like, I absolutely loved this book. I would not be surprised. It probably won't be in my top 3 just because we have Vampire and Strength of the Few coming out later this year. And then, of course, Dungeon Crawler Carl is firmly in my top 3. But I think this will make it into my top 5. Like, it might be number 5 or number 4 in my top 5.
I would say the only thing is, and this isn't anything that's like inherently wrong with the book. It's more of like my personal preferences in that I love a series because this story could have absolutely continued. You know what I mean? And
could it?
I think it could have. And I think it could have even had like a little bit slower of a pace. I mean, and in some ways it was really great with this book because it was very fast paced. There was no like filler scenes. Everything like had a reason for being in the book. But yeah, I think just for my personal preferences, it was, I would have liked more. I liked it, but I would have liked more, I even said to you when I was done, I was like, oh wait, that's how it ends. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's a standalone. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I liked it for being a standalone. Like, it would have been cool to get more of it because, like, I loved the book so much. It would be nice to have more. But at the end of the day, I like a really tight story. It was just like, it presented me with this world. It presented me with these characters. It gave me enough time of the characters together. It gave me a great problem to solve, and then it kind of solved that problem. And it ended like in a really good, like, emotional way. And so I think for me, I don't know. I think for me, I liked the idea that it was a standalone, and also doing the podcast. It's like, oh, thank God, it's not another big series.
All right, I'll amend and I'll give it a 4 out of 5 then because it's a great story. The plot is great. It moves along at a really good pace. There's no slow, boring parts. I liked the characters. I liked the overarching like arch of how it plays out. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I'll give it a 4.
All right, cool. Well, that is our spoiler review for Blood Over Brighthaven. So if you would like to stick around for the spoiler discussion, if you've read the book, then please do so. But we are going to get into spoilers for the entire book, so you don't want this spoiled for you. So go away if you have not read it. All right, Sam, spoiler thoughts.
All right.
So, yeah, what do you want to touch on first?
I mean, I'm trying to remember specifically what it was that made me figure it out and why I texted you last night. I'm trying to remember where I was in the book. That's what I really, really wanted to talk about.
Was it potentially the hunting ground where he was like, oh, I know the coordinates because like my hunting and stuff. Was
It was before that, and I want to say it
oh
was when Skyona was getting frustrated because she wanted a clearer image, and she had said, they can only see gray, and it's like these lights for them to siphon, the
yeah,
energy out. And at another part in the book, they had mentioned how there were certain lines of the way that they do their spells that they were not allowed to touch. And they had
right.
been told, like, this is how it has to be. It's God's will, yada, yada, yada. And that set off alarm bells for me of,
Hmm.
oh, I don't think they want you getting a clear picture, because then you know
Correct.
where it's coming from. And then I
Right.
went, oh, they're the blight. I went, they are the blight. And everything kind of started clicking and falling into place. And it was shortly thereafter
Yeah.
where, oh, and when they, Skyona?
Siona.
Skyona was teaching Tommy about how, like, all right, well, pick some coordinates because I'm showing you the basics. And when she said he picked the center, that was like a no-go zone, no one was allowed to go in there. I was like,
Right.
well, that's because that's where they are. And
Okay.
and I don't usually catch these things, and it wasn't disappointing for me to catch it
Sure.
now. It was a fun, like, oh my God, I think that's what this is. It's not confirmed yet, but and then
Right.
it was. I love a story where everybody thinks the people who are saving them from something bad are actually also the creators of it.
Right.
So I just loved that it was a really, really great way to tie everything in together.
Yes, absolutely. And it's such a devastating
Mm-hmm.
reveal because this whole time, like, we see Tommy, kind of show up right inside the shield of the city, and he's like instantly mistreated, and you see how the Quen are treated and all of this stuff. But the whole time, you're kind of like, yeah, like the city isn't good. Like it's hard living in the city, but it's kind of a necessary evil because it's protecting you from this natural phenomenon outside.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you're thinking, at the end of the day, like, do most of these people suck? Like, yeah, they do, but this city has to be here for protection, and you kind of have to like make do with it. And then to find out that they're actually the perpetrators of all of this, it's like, oh shit. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
And
it's such a
I
good reveal.
I think it was almost more devastating for me because Siona and Tommy were getting close, and I was like, oh, this is going to get between them. I was like, I don't know that it would be something Tommy could get over. You know what I mean? To find
Right.
out that these people were the reason that his whole clan was taken out. And my question, and maybe you can kind of answer it for me, is what is the need for the barrier if they are the blight?
Well, I think the barrier does a few things. It keeps them safe from the elements. So like inside the city it's very warm, and
Mm-hmm.
outside the city it's like a frozen wasteland.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps them safe from any like weather or anything like that. Um, but I think that the barrier is mostly a kind of show. Like not only does it keep them safe from, it does keep them safe from like the weather and stuff, but it's also to
Keep them
kind
in
of,
line.
yeah, well, it's also to kind of like keep everybody convinced. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, oh yeah, we have this shield around the city, and that's how we're
Mm-hmm.
able to do what we do. And it also allows, they also needed like cheap labor. And so they kind of put up this rule
Mm-hmm.
where anybody that makes it inside the barrier can come and work for us and live here safely from the blight. And so it's kind of their way of like, you
Yeah,
know,
keeping everybody in
um,
line in a way, believing the big lie that they don't realize is a big
right.
lie.
Right, yeah, exactly. And I think it's mostly for show because as we see, Siona is able to create a spell that channels inside the city. And we hear about this dark magic user. I forget what his name was.
Mm-hmm.
But he went on a rampage and killed everybody. And knowing what we know now, I wouldn't be surprised. It doesn't really tell us, but I wouldn't be surprised if he found out about what the blight actually is and went
Mm-hmm.
around and tried to kill his other high mages to make it stop, and then he was eventually stopped.
And my other thought was, won't they eventually run out of things outside of the barrier to use as like energy sources?
Yes, and that's why near the end of the book, before everything starts going down, you hear about them saying they want to expand their reach, like they want to expand the coordinates that they can
Yep.
use past the surrounding lands.
Yeah.
And that was being talked about like right before everything started going down, because they were talking about expanding the barrier, because right outside of Brighthaven, and I thought this was so clever.
Yes.
Right outside of Brighthaven is like a constant siphoning zone. Like it's always being siphoned. Blight is always happening in kind of this ring around the city. Now that that has kind of depleted everything. So now they're wanting to expand their barrier. Now that everything in that ring has been siphoned, they're wanting to expand their barrier so that they can then build their city there. And then they'll siphon the next ring around it, and then expand the barrier again and siphon the next ring around it.
Because that's interesting how they're kind of this like technologically advanced, but at the same time, you realize slowly as you go through everyone who lives in there never leaves.
Right.
They really have no idea. Like Siona had said she'd never seen the ocean before, or
Correct. Yep.
snow, or anything like that. And they constantly call it God's Garden originally, before you know that you're siphoning from their world. And they talk about like the negative coordinates they want to try to see like how far they can get out. So yeah, it was that the auto, siphoning was one I didn't catch that. And so that was a really big like, oh, they do it on purpose because they don't want everyone to get through, but they do still need more workers. So some will get through and some won't.
Yep.
That makes
they
sense.
want
They want to expand. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, they want the occasional person to get through to add another person to their, dwindling workforce or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I thought that was super clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, what else about that twist? I loved that her initial reaction was disbelief. Like I liked that her and Tommy had these two differences in how they viewed like religion and God and everything. And they both see the same thing on the spellograph. They both see like the mirror pops up, they see this kind of snowy wonderland, and we see the blight kill the tree. And Tommy has like an instant reaction where he's like, that's blight. He's like, what you're doing is causing blight. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, you're misunderstanding. It's just because she's like, you're Quen. So like, maybe, God's bounty isn't meant for you. Maybe this is, maybe you're seeing this as blight because, you're cursed or whatever. Mm-hmm. Because you haven't converted to, our God and all of that. And it just gave...
Like, you saw the same thing I saw. So.
Right. And I loved that she initially, like, he like stormed off. He was like, fuck this, I'm out. And he goes, and I love that she still couldn't quite believe it because she has grown up in this world that mm-hmm. has told her all of this, religious dogma for so long. And she had to see for herself. So she goes to bring him, talks to him. He's like, no, it was just cursed. And then she starts thinking, wait, there's no way it could have been cursed. Like, I built this spellograph myself. Like,
Mhm.
nobody had ever touched the spellograph before me. Like, this was brand new.
Mhm.
And not only that, but, I was using, like, the paper I was using was brand new. Like, it didn't come from this place. Like, it came, like, I brought it. Like, I know that nobody else has touched it.
Yeah.
Um, and so then she starts like having little doubts, and then she goes back to her lab and opens up another mirror further out and sees a dark-haired Quen girl, and she's like, let's just try siphoning again. And she siphons and it destroys the girl. And that was her moment where she was like, oh my God, like,
Well,
what are we doing?
it's almost worse because she tries to stop it halfway through and it does
Yep.
stop siphoning the girl, and she's left like half there, half destroyed, slowly
Right.
choking on her own blood. And
Yep.
that's really the breaking point for her. And
Right.
something that's like interesting about this book is, and I can't really think of another one off the top of my head where you have something that's so based in magic and religion,
Mm.
where to me that's kind of saying science and religion, where they're very
Right.
different things to me. And so
Yeah.
they want to base all of these things in science, and then anytime anyone questions anything, they're like, well, this is what God wants. And it's like, well, are we men of science or are we men of God? Because those,
Right.
in this circumstance, it's two very different things.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's what I found so interesting about it is, you have this magic that is very much like science. It's very
Yeah.
much like technology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, but there's all this religious dogma behind it. And it's like, I think even at one point they say that they're like, are we going to let logic dictate, what's going on here? I think it's when
Mm-hmm.
she's talking to Brigham. He said, he's like, oh, this is the problem with you being too logical, is that you're thinking about this too much.
Too
And
logical.
yeah, and she's like, you wanted me to become a mage because I was logical,
Yeah.
because I wasn't your idea of what these other women are, like very emotional or whatever is the
Mm-hmm.
stereotype they were working with. And she's like, that's why you wanted me to become a mage, is because you thought that I was very like calculated and logical, and I looked at everything as like a scientific principle. And he's like, you need to trust in the religion. And it's like, well, these two things are not going together
Yeah.
very well. Like, they're not, like, these two things don't make sense together. And what I loved about it is, did you ever play BioShock Infinite?
No.
Okay, so Comstock is kind of the big like bad guy in that
Mm-hmm.
game, and you show up to this utopia in the sky. It's like the floating city of something. I forget what the city is called. But or Rapture, or no, Rapture was the first game.
Mm-hmm.
Columbia is the name. Um, but it's very much the same thing where this guy Comstock has kind of created this city in the sky to, get everybody away from the horrors of the real world, like all of the terrible things that are happening on, the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm going to bring everyone into the sky and we'll live in this utopia. And as you get deeper and deeper into the game, you realize that there is some nasty things happening behind closed doors in this city. And the closer you get to the top of who's leading this place, you realize that there are some really just disgusting things happening. And it's like scary. Like, it's like, it's really not a utopia at all.
Sounds like a bullet train. Is that am I thinking of the right one? Where the further you get on the train, like the more you realize what it's taking for the train to keep going, and it gets more
Oh,
disturbing.
Snowpiercer.
Oh, Piercer, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yep. And so
Interesting.
Yeah, so you should play BioShock Infinite. You'd love it.
BioShock Infinite. Okay.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I literally have a poster of it above my computer monitor here. It's one of my favorite games.
I'll have
Um,
to try that.
yeah, it's really good.
Let me Google
And the
it.
characters are really good too. You have Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth. And Elizabeth is kind of stuck in this tower. And early on in the game, you just kind of come across her and save her from the tower. And then she joins your party, and
Mhm.
she's kind of
Hmm.
you're an NPC that like follows you around and helps you do stuff. And
Can you
yeah,
play this on any gaming
yeah,
systems?
yep,
Yes. Okay, nice, nice.
yep, yeah, yeah. You should definitely play it.
That, you know what's
Um,
funny? A little just like a side that's similar
uh-huh.
to this. I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
this one dream like decades ago that has stuck with me forever, and it's kind of similar to what we were just talking about, where in my dream there were these like two huge, just grotesque people standing in front of me before I started on this like game board. Like think of like the game of life, you know what I
yeah.
mean? And the further I got in the game, by the end, I had turned into the people that I saw at the beginning.
Oh
And
wow.
it's just been this dream that has stuck with me forever where you don't realize sometimes what it takes for things to get done and what it can like turn people into. And
Right.
it's kind of reminiscent of that.
Yeah, well, like in this book, it's kind of like, when Brigham eventually tells her like, okay, you're right. Like, this is what's going on, and she's like, how do people let this happen? And he's kind of like, well, he's like, you kind of just have to go with it, and you kind of have to become okay with this in order for you to progress with the magic and to further the city and everything. And so everybody who's working there that is aware of where the magic comes from, like they have all killed probably hundreds of people, if not more,
Way more. Yeah.
um, to cast this magic. And even then, when she is like drinking a cup of tea or something, she's like, what Quen had to die for me to be drinking like a hot cup of tea right now? Because
Mm-hmm.
all of our technology is powered by magic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, who had to die for the lights to come on this morning? You know what I mean? And once I think that was the important part of her showing everybody in the city what is going on by bringing up all these mirrors all over the place. Because like you should know where this is coming from. Like you should know, you
Yeah.
know what it's costing to turn on your lights.
I thought it was really interesting how the author put early in Siona and Tommy meeting and him being her assistant, where they're talking about, okay, well, if you have two men and one man it has really good intentions, but everything he does
Yes.
in his life has terrible consequences. And then you have another man who only has bad intentions, but everything that he does has really good outcomes for everyone. Who goes to heaven's door and who goes to hell? And that's really the main theme throughout the whole rest of the book, where Siona is realizing, okay, well, here's Bingham, who I thought was this amazing guy. And now he's telling me that he knew this and he continued because he thought it was better for the greater good that we like eliminate all these lives to keep our lives as good as they are. And Siona decides, well, that's not what I want to do. I want to, actually do good, regardless of the intentions and all of that. It's one thing to have good intentions, but to actually follow through on it and get the good results. So I
Yes.
really loved how she threw that little thing there in the beginning, and then really the whole rest of the book is kind of playing around with that. What do they call it, like a thought game, where it's like, well, what
Yeah. Like a thought experiment.
thought experiment, there you go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I didn't really realize it until just now when you were saying that, but that's kind of like a major theme
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of the book, because Siona's religion says, and funny how this kind of mirrors the Christian religion, I guess, but Siona's religion tells her that intentions matter. Like, it's the intent of the person. If you intended to do good, then God sees that as good. And, you know, I don't think it's so cut and dry in the Christian religion necessarily, but they kind of dumb it down to these two things. And yeah, Tommy has that great thing where he's like, you know, there's this one man who is acting for everybody's good, but bad things keep happening to the people around him. He invests in someone's company, but then that company ends up going under, and they accrue a bunch of like taxes and all this other stuff. And then there's this other guy who, you know, fires his young assistant, but then she goes on to get a better job with way better pay, and her life is like overall better, and kind of going through these different examples. And that was such an interesting thing, because it's like, well, yeah, the guy that was a total asshole, that treats everybody like crap, of course, you know, he's the one that wouldn't go to heaven. But all of his actions are causing an inverse reaction, where all of these good things are happening. And yeah, it was a fantastic thought experiment. It's like, oh man, like I haven't really ever had to struggle with that thought experiment before. And yeah, it was just fantastic. For the rest of the book, you see, you know, and it's like, what other characters, you know, you bring up Brigham, and his intentions are good. Like, he's, you know, he wants Siona to be the first female mage. He believes in her. He believes in women becoming mages. And he's kind of this force for good at the beginning of the book. And he wants to, you know, the barrier expansion and all of these things for his city that he sees as a good thing, or that are good things. But the way that he does it is by killing everything else around the city. And then you have Siona, who she's kind of the exact opposite. And, you know, when we were talking in the spoiler review or the spoiler free section, I was saying Siona is not a likable person. Like, she does become one later, but I would say the first half of the book, she's kind of a shitty person. Like, she has her moments where she comes through and like sees the good in Tommy, or, you know, she has her views like slightly changed, but it's not until later in the book where she does kind of a complete 180. And
oh yeah, she's super prejudiced through a lot of the book towards the Quen, you know what I mean?
She's
if not out loud in her thoughts.
Right, yeah. She's super prejudiced, and she's also very selfish. Like, even at the beginning of the book, there's like the baker's boy that like just wants to be friends with her, or like probably has a crush on her or whatever, and he's like bringing her donuts and bread and stuff, and her not uncle, her aunt or whatever is like, don't you remember like that boy's name? And she's like, not really. And she's like, he says hi to you every day, like he brings you bread and all this stuff, and you can't remember his name. She's like, it's just not really important to me. And so she's very kind of like narcissistic and selfish, where she, maybe not to like an extreme extent, but just to where she doesn't really notice anything outside of her bubble. She's very like self-focused. And that comes out in good ways and bad ways. And it's just like, she doesn't really care a whole lot about the people around her that aren't immediately helping her. Like, even her aunt says, you know, can you name one other female mage? And she's like, besides your mentor. And she goes, oh, no, not really. And it's just interesting to see the difference between her and Brigham, who is actively trying to help people below him and bring them up to his level. And she is actively doing the opposite. And she's like very selfish, trying to get ahead. And then she ends up doing the most good. Like she actually ends up doing the most good.
Yeah, and I think the only thing to like, add to that would be Brigham was in a place where he could do that, and Siona had the odds stacked against her the whole time. So I don't know how she could have gotten where she did though without doing what she did and like shutting everything out except for studying and
Yeah.
getting ahead. Because Brigham,
Yeah.
you find out later, well, oh yeah, he hires all these women in his textile places. You find out later that it's making the women sterile, and he knows
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So
crazy.
I mean, I thought one part where she was just being so intentionally ignorant in a way is when she didn't think that the other mages knew where energy came from. I was like, of course they know. Of course, at least like the masters know this. You think you're the first one to have figured this out?
Yeah, well that was kind of an interesting part of the book because I was even doubting, like, do they know? Like, does
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was trying to figure it out, and I was like, I'm sure that there's gonna be, like, I'm sure the next twist is we're gonna find out that Brigham knows.
Yeah.
But I guess my thought process was if nobody has the crystal clear mirror that she has, if nobody is able to see exactly what the blight is taking or what they're siphoning, then how would they know that it's in the real world? But these other mages have been doing this for years and years and years, and they're all very smart. And one thing I loved about how ML Wang wrote this was it would have been so easy for Renthorn to be this character that is kind of just getting ahead on the successes of others and isn't really smart himself. Like, turns out he actually has no idea what he's doing, but he keeps stealing work from other mages. But actually, he is doing that. But in actuality, he is extremely smart. And the author goes to lengths to say, or to have Siona say, like, no, he is actually like a brilliant mage. Like, I can't just
discredit him.
Yeah, I can't just discredit him. Like, I can't just win by doing the bare minimum or like showing that he's feeding off all these other mages. Like, he's actually a good mage. Yeah. And so I thought that was really important because it would have been really easy for the author to do the exact opposite.
Well, and I thought I thought that was the direction she was gonna go in with Mandra, because he got through even though he clearly wasn't that great, and it was because his dad was already a master. Is that what it is, or is it just like an archmage?
Archmage, yeah.
Archmage. And that was interesting with Mandra, where he was kind of a dictator in the beginning, and then at the end, he's suddenly being like really, really nice to her, and that one threw me off.
Yeah, because I think that it's kind of the it's the old boys club of
absolutely
him getting in there and just trying to fit in, just doing whatever, and same as her, just doing whatever he has to do to be able to fit in and to like be a part of this and to get ahead. And in order to do that, because he happens to be a man, he is brought in by his fellow mages, like, we're gonna buy you a drink tonight and all that kind of stuff. But at the end, he does go to her and he's like, hey, this is all pretty fucked. Like, like he's like, I'm not unaware that this is fucked, Yeah. And so I thought that was really good.
That was really good.
But speaking of the getting a drink and everything, I loved when Tommel was like, let me buy you a drink, ma'am.
Yeah, that was really sweet.
Yeah. And it was just like, he's like, someone should buy you a drink. And then I love how like intricate this world's politics are, in that, you know, we're in Siona's POV, and
Mm-hmm.
she's thinking, well, she's like, if I say no, then it seems like I'm telling him that I don't want to hang out with him because he's a Quen. But
Yeah.
if I say yes, then it has this other implication, and kind of going down this rabbit hole of like what all of these like social politics mean,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what she does.
Yep.
And then she eventually, and then her other thing was like, if I buy him a drink, then it's me like
Mm-hmm.
discrediting this thing that he's offered me,
Yeah.
and it's me saying that I don't think that he can pay for his own drink.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, you know, why don't we both just go buy a drink? Like, we'll both
Yeah.
buy our drinks and we'll go there. And then even when they're walking to the bar, she passes the bar that she would usually go to, because she's like, well, if I go to this bar, there's no way that he could even afford his own drink, you know?
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
so she's like, let's go to the Quen bar. And he's like, man, would you really want to go there? And she's like, where do you think all the college students go?
Yeah.
Like, she's like, we all go to the cheap bar. Like, let's go there. Um, and so they go there, and then the bartender is like, drinks are on the house, like, congratulations. And he calls her
Mm-hmm.
Madra. And at the time, she like leans over to him. She's like, what did he just call me? Because she didn't understand the Quen
Yeah.
language. And and Tommy says, he's like, oh no, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she still like doesn't quite believe him. And so later on, he's like, she's like, what did that actually mean when he called me that? Like, was that a term of like
Mm-hmm.
disrespect? Like, was that like whatever? And he says, no, it means woman mage, or as we would call them in the Quen, or no, as you would call them for the Quen,
Mm-hmm.
witches. And he's like, we called them something else. They had like a term of like respect for them.
Yeah.
But he's like, Madra is like a term of respect that we used for our women mages.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way that he explained it, because she was like, wait, you had women mages? And he's like, oh, all of our mages were women, except for the very occasional man. And she's like, why was that? And she's like, well, the men were out hunting. The women had time to be at home in the community and focus on this craft together, and be able to like support each other. And you know, they were in their safe space where they could practice magic. They're like, now everybody in Brighthaven is always in this safe space.
Yeah.
So men are able to participate too. But back then, like, the men had to go hunt. They had to go cut down trees. They had to, you know, do all this other work. Um, and so yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but
No, I mean, I thought that was really interesting. I liked that scene. It was kind of sad that that was like the only scene we really get with them doing anything fun and lighthearted, though, you know?
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like a lot of their other just like little moments together,
Mhm.
like when
Yeah.
they had like gotten in a fight, and she goes up to the sink, and like he's like washing dishes. He's like, I'll go back to my work, ma'am, and goes back to like washing dishes. And then she like takes off her robes, and she goes up to the sink and like washes dishes with him. um and just like all of the like, I feel like Siona is so horny. She like all the time she's like, his smell, or like I brushed his hand, or like his hair or whatever. Just like all the time. I'm like, man, I think you need to listen to your what your insides are telling you.
Yeah, I think she'd been so used to being surrounded by men that were so rude to her for so long, and she'd never really been interested in one. And now that she was, you know, it was full steam ahead.
Right, yeah. And I liked that she was kind of like, I don't know. I don't know what I can't remember what initially attracted her to him, but there was a point where she was like, these characteristics that Tommy had were the thing that like drew me to him initially. But I like this new Tommy that's like arguing with me and like
Yeah.
challenging me and all this stuff. And it was kind of cool to see her grow into, like any of the other men that were mages, they were automatically challenging her. And so she was kind of like put off by that. But
and they have this like really big power imbalance because all Siona would have to do is go tell someone that he like touched her inappropriately, and she could have honestly gotten him killed. And so when they get in that one fight, he says to her, either you let me be 100% honest at all times, or I will just go back to being like your actual helper, and that's it. And I do what you say, absolutely nothing more. And I think that was like a really big waking up point for Siona.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Yeah, for sure. He's like, I can either be 100% honest or I can be 100% like subservient. Yeah, exactly. It was honest and respectful. He's like, I can be 100% honest or 100% respectful. And then she says, as often as possible, both. And he kind of looks at her and he's like, fine. And he goes to turn away and she's like, wait, no. She's like, I'd rather you be 100% honest.
Yeah.
I'd rather you be 100% honest than curb that for being respectful. Because she does have a reaction whenever, he kind of comes out of his shell and he'll like say something and then she'll say something and he'll be like, sorry, Madra. And he'll like, kind of back off and kind of go back into himself. And she hates it when that happens. And so she's like, I'd rather you be 100% bold and say it how it is. And there's this great discussion around that time where Siona tells him, like, obviously the founders were doing the right thing because look at all they've achieved with this city. Like, look at all the things that they've done. And he says, he has this great line where he says, my knowledge of magic is obviously nothing to yours. If your founding mages thought that women weren't suited to magic and you think that they were rightly inspired by God, then I'll just have to take your word for it. And it's kind of throwing it back into her court where it's like, okay, well, like you believe that all of this is God's will, but if you believe that, then you also believe that women aren't suited to this work because that's what it's telling you. Yeah. And so it's like, how do you reconcile those two things? Like if you're going to stick to, no, God is in charge of all of this, like the tyrannish God is correct, then how do you reconcile? Like you're actively going against that by being a female mage.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't have said that better. That was a heavy theme throughout the whole book. With it's like, don't ask questions. It's God's will. And it's like, well, God's not here. There's men running everything now, and they can come out at any time and say, well, this is how God wants it. And it's like, so who are you really listening to at the end of the day? Right. Absolutely. And I think, we don't really talk about like real world politics or real world religion a whole lot on this podcast. But it is kind of the problem I have with some religion in the real world, because it's kind of like, I consider myself a Christian. I do go to church and stuff like that. But there's some parts of the Bible or some parts of like the teaching in general that I kind of raise an eyebrow at sometimes, that are said like, oh, this is inspired by God. And it's like, well, what that really means is a human wrote this, that this is their ideas and their thought processes, but they were a really godly person, so we should treat what they say as gospel. And it's like, yeah, but you're like, that's the difference between having a word from God that is gospel, and then having
someone interpret that and treating their word as gospel. I'm like that. They're like humans are human, and humans suck, and humans get things wrong, and so I don't think you can always trust a human's interpretation of God's will, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I have like similar thoughts as you do. Like, I grew up Catholic, did everything, confirmation, all of that. My husband's Jewish. Neither of us are really religious people. It's kind of, at least the times where we grew up, I feel like, religion played a bigger part in a lot more people's lives than it does these days specifically.
Yeah.
But my whole issue is I don't know if I necessarily believe in God. I've always kind of said karma is my God. That's what I believe in. Like, you get back what you put out there. Do I believe in a higher power? Absolutely. I believe there's something, there's got to be some reason that we're here and why we're doing things. But then I see how many different ways the Bible has been interpreted. And there's some ways I agree with, and then there's some ways that I don't agree with, but it's all technically like the same umbrella that it falls under. And I am just way too inquisitive of a person, and every question you ask to someone is going to be their interpretation that you get back in response.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, it's just, to me, I'm going to put out there what I want back in the world, and I am okay with that being my life principle in general.
For sure. Yeah. I totally get that. And I kind of operate in the same way to some extent. But I also think that it goes the other way too, to be fair to religion. Yeah. I think that there's been times where I've heard a like atheist or agnostic kind of interpret scripture of some kind, and they're like, this is what this means, isn't that crazy? That's what they believe. And I've been like, if you were to like really dig into that and study that, that's not what that means. And so there's definitely been times where people who are not religious have interpreted things that are like, this is my interpretation. It's like, well, that interpretation isn't right either. Like, I think that humans are human across the board, and whether you're a pastor or whether you're an atheist, I think both can interpret the Bible wrongly. And so I think that was just really interesting in this book to kind of see that come up and be like, well, if this is what you believe, like if you believe that this person who erected the barrier and everything, if you believe that they were inspired by God and were a godly person, and they're telling everybody else not to have women as mages, then, doesn't that kind of question your actions or like what you believe? Or
exactly.
And so, yeah, I thought that was such a fantastic clapback. And it really shut her up. Like it really shut her up. She's like, oh.
Yeah. I think I'm of the to each his own. You do you, I do me. As long as we're not trying to like infringe upon each other or say I'm right, you're wrong. It's like, just let people live. Let people believe what they want to believe.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is not how it works in their world.
Right, correct. Yeah. Two very, very different ideologies.
I would say the makeup of this world, or at least inside the, zone and shelter and whatnot, is kind of my worst nightmare.
Sorry, what's your worst nightmare?
Having to live in that society.
Okay.
It would kind of be my worst nightmare, where like, women, you're just supposed to be like wives and mothers. And
oh yeah, for sure.
As someone who, like, I am a mother, I have a little boy, I love him to death, but it's always been so interesting to me how so many women just have this natural inclination, of like, I know I want children from like a young age. Like, I want a family, I want kids. And it was something I never it wasn't something I craved. You know what I mean? Like I would have
Sure.
been totally okay not being a mother. And thankfully, you know, I have a son. I love it. I can only have one. I could never do more.
Yeah, for sure.
But just the idea of having to live in this society where it's like, nope, you have to be a wife and a mother, and that's it. And guess what? Even if you did have some sort of education on the side, if you wanted anything published, it's going to be in your husband's name. That infuriated me.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And that's
For
not me
sure.
holding anything against the book itself, because that's great, like world building, and that you could make me feel that emotion, you know?
Yeah. God, you need to read. You need to read Kingstark Tidings.
You
Didn't
have
you?
said that. I think I downloaded it. I think I did.
Oh
I
my
just have so
God.
many things on my list right now, Spencer. I have
I
too many things.
know, but there's such a good, like, in Kingstark Tidings, there is the, like, it starts out as the stereotypical, like, medieval fantasy. Like, you have
Mhm.
mages, you have the nobility and royalty. The women are kind of, very much like they were in real life medieval England or whatever, where they were like princesses and nobles, and the man was kind of the head of the family and all that stuff. And that's kind of where you start. And then as you go throughout the story, you see
Mhm.
all of these other cultures where women have different roles. And
Uh-huh.
you eventually get to this place. It's my favorite part in the entire series. You eventually get to this place called Lon the Resh, where it's literally flipped,
Mhm.
where the women are the heads of houses and they're like royalty and the nobility and everything. And their husbands are the one that are like staying home with the kids. And there's a really, you have all these people that came from the first land and they're coming over to Lon the Resh, and all of the men are like, oh my God, like this is scary, like this is terrible. And they're like, no, it's just the inverse of what we've
Yeah.
been doing back there. Like it's not any worse than it is there. And they're like, no, this is slavery. And they're like, no,
Oh,
it's
now it's
it's not. Yeah.
It's for
And so,
men.
it's such a good flip, and it's such a good way to like look at it and see the inverse. And again, what I really like about it is the author, Kelcade, she is not trying to push any political belief.
Mhm.
She's not trying to like make any political statement. She's just kind of showing this idea.
Yeah.
And it's so good, Sam. You're gonna
There's
love it.
another series that has something like that, and I can't remember if it's Farseer, maybe, but it might be Farseer, where there is a point where it's something similar like that, where the men join the women's clan. You know, they take the women's name, and the women are the head of the household. It might be Farseer. I can't
Oh,
remember.
interesting.
Maybe. But I do know I've read another book where they do that, where it swaps, where you have like the normal gender kind of roles that we're used to, and then the complete inverse of it. And yeah,
Right.
I love that. I do love that.
It's so good. It's so good. Um, so I really quick wanted to touch on Renthorn assaulting Siona and Tommy showing up and punching him in the face.
Yep.
That was incredible. And also he's like kind of a psychopath. He's like, I want to see the blight kill somebody, you know? And then we find out later that he made a spell for his staff that mimics the blight, except it goes a lot slower. And so he's kind of like a psycho. But I love the, she's like, I'm so glad you're here. And he's like hugging her and everything. And she pulls away and she says, Tommel, we're surrounded by devils. And he says, that's what I tried to tell you.
I tried to tell you this. I mean, a really great word to describe Siona would be ignorant, I guess. Ignorant, like she was
Yeah.
blissfully ignorant, and she didn't even know how the Quen were living. And it really hits home in a couple points throughout the book, and that's one of them.
Yeah, for sure. For
Mhm.
sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, she's finally getting it. And what do I have here? Intelligent man. Oh yeah, so she like makes a show of firing Tommel, and
Yeah.
she's like, he mishandled like my conduit and it exploded and all this stuff. And And he plays along looking very like demure and looking very like, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry, ma'am. And like kind of like very humbled. And before this, he would say things like, well, yeah, of course they mistreat us. Like, of course they would like blame something on a Quen. And she's like, why would they blame something on a Quen if the Quen wasn't like, that's not what people do. Like, they're not gonna like just blame you for the sake of blaming you. And he's like, with all respect, ma'am, he's like, I don't think you really like understand this city
At
very
all.
well. And she finally has this moment where she's like publicly firing him, right? And
Mm,
he goes from being like a very bold like Quen man to very like, oh, sorry, and like very like
yeah,
humiliated and stuff.
yeah.
And in her head, she says that she didn't want to wonder why someone as intelligent and strong as Tommy is, why he would need to have the skill of looking humiliated and looking dumber than he really is.
Mhm.
And that's the moment where she's like, oh, like he had to learn this. He had to learn how to do this because that's what this world requires of him.
Mhm.
That's really sad.
It's really sad, and I mean, they briefly touch on in a part of the book where I guess like men from his clan or maybe anyone who was a Quen, essentially, like the men tended to have long hair, but if
Yes.
you wanted to get hired or at least get a semi-decent job for a Quen, you had to try to assimilate essentially and make yourself look more like them. That was really sad, but that kind of plays into the acting subservient, and
Yeah.
they have to basically change themselves completely, and you find out that um what's his name? Renshaw? Is that
Renthorn.
Renthorn, was doing really terrible things to the people that were the Quens that were working or cleaning near him, to the point where the person who staffed it wasn't putting women in there anymore
Right.
when he was there.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just, I mean, the author did a very good job in like slowly showing you how terrible he was, as opposed to
Yes.
just being immediate, because in the beginning you're like, all right, he's stuck up, he's always gotten what he wants,
Maybe we'll have a redemption arc.
yeah, something like that, and then progressively you realize like, no, this guy's out of his mind.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What did you think of Kara, just in general, but also her interactions with Tommel and her interactions with Siona? What did you think of this character?
I really liked her. I honestly thought she was going to play a much larger part in the book just based off of the opening. I thought she was going to be the one who was going to be a mage. So that was kind of like surprising to me. I just thought with the blight sort of touching
Yes,
her and giving her that something was going to come about because of that.
that is a good point. Yeah.
And there was really nothing other than it being a part of that opening scene, but that was fine. I really liked how she stood up for Tommy. She was so, because I tried to put myself in her shoes as opposed to Siona, and if Siona had come into my house and she was who she was, I think I would have reacted very similarly to her. And her story was just sad overall, because every time Tommy looks at her, he's thinking about, oh
His
well,
friends.
she wouldn't be like this if it wasn't for all of what we've had to go through, and like she would have been gentler and kinder, but she still would
Right.
have had her father's wild side. And so it was honestly kind of just like heartbreaking anytime she was brought into a scene.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked that. I liked that Tommy had that kind of link to his humanity, because I think he would have otherwise been like a very bitter person. He is kind of a bitter person, but I think he would have been like, kind of he wouldn't have been as good of a character if he didn't have like this link to like his past and stuff.
To wanting to
Um,
keep him like grounded.
yeah. And you're absolutely right. I didn't really do much research on this book before I started it. I didn't read the
Yeah.
description. I didn't do anything like that. Hopefully you've learned your lesson from Liza
Oh my
Block-Lamora.
God. I'm so mad about that. You
I
keep
know.
the secret for 2 books and then you did blow it up on the freaking back. What was
Yep.
up with that?
I don't know.
Oh,
That was awful. But ever since then, even me, like I rarely look at the description of books anymore. I kind of get like a general idea of what the book's about and decide if I want to read it or not. So I don't know really what was said on the back of this book, but in the beginning, when we're getting that snapshot of Tommel and the other Quen running towards Brighthaven,
mm-hmm.
He grabs Kara and she gets like just kind of hit by the light a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that Kara was going to be the main character that we follow throughout the rest of the book. And then it switched to Siona and it was like, oh, it's like a different character. And so it wasn't obviously it's 15 years later, 16 years later, or whatever, because she was a baby in that first scene.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely thought that that it was going a slightly different way.
Or it was going to have some like inverse reaction by being touched by the blight, but it not killing her. That was also where my thoughts went.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that would have been interesting if that had played a part. And again, that's where we get into. Maybe if this had been a trilogy, like that would have been a thing. That would have been like another, variable that would play a part. But I think it was just to, I really don't know what that was for. I don't know what having that scar. It really didn't seem to play a role later on at all.
Yeah, I just expected something to come of it, and so I was kind of surprised that nothing did.
Right. But I think overall, I liked her as a character. I liked her being the like completely unhinged teenager that tries to kill Siona.
Yeah.
Like I love when Siona first comes into the house, she's like talking with Tommel and Kara comes in the door and she's like, "Oh, hello, ma'am." And she's just like really nice. And then all of a sudden Siona turns around later and Kara's got like a knife to her and like is trying to stab her.
I like when Siona goes back later towards the end and she gives her tea. And at first she's like, is this is this poison? And she's like, no, because if I was going to do it, I'd do it to your face. Like, that's the way of my people. Right. And then when Siona finally takes a sip of her tea, she's like,
it's cold.
It's really cold. It's probably from yesterday.
Yep. Absolutely.
I love that. It was just such a tiny little thing, but I loved it.
So good. And honestly, that thing about she's like, I'd do it to your face. Mm-hmm. She was like, I'd be like, hey, Mage Freenan or whatever, and you'd turn around and then I'd do it. And later that comes full circle with Renthorn, where she's at the top of the water tower with the spellograph. And she's like, hey, Mage Renthorn, and he turns around and she jumps down and just clocks him with it.
Oh, it's great.
That was so good. That was so good. But yeah, I loved how little by little they really warm up to each other, and they do this thing to go, get the papers of the spell, like the original spell that they were going to cast. And so Kara goes one way and she goes another, and Siona goes and gets the pieces of her spellograph to put it back together. And then Kara goes and gets like the sheets of the spell or whatever. And then they meet back up and Siona's like, I'm so glad you're safe. Like, oh my God. And Kara's like, what is going on? Yeah. And Kara says, she's like, she thinks, she's like, I never got to meet my mom, but this reminds me of the kind of thing that we would do together. And Siona says, government insurgency.
Sure, why not?
And Kara says, do you have any ideas of something that would be more fun? And like, what would you and your mom do together? And she's like, I don't know. We'd get tea or go dress shopping or,
Yeah.
whatever. And they kind of keep having this moment. And Kara says, and Siona keeps having like these little emotional moments where she's like tearing up or whatever. And Kara says, God, are you crying again? And Siona says, I don't know. I think that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. And Kara says, you are so weird.
So
It just, I love the banter. I love the banter between the two of them. It's so good. It's so
great.
good. So then Siona has a moment with Tommel, and she tells him, and these are kind of the last moments that we're getting with them together, which is why I'm going over them.
Mm-hmm.
And Siona, she tells Tommel that he has a beautiful family and that he's done a great job with Kara. And, then he says what you were talking about earlier, where he's like, I feel like I've done her a disservice by, teaching her the Quen way and teaching her to have Quen values and the Quen language and all this stuff, because she can't really fit in with this city very well because I've put so much Quen in her.
Yeah.
And Siona's like, no, I think it's really important that you've done that.
Yeah.
So then in the timeline of it all, we see Siona go off and do other things, but that night we actually get a flashback later to the rest of this night.
Mm-hmm.
And she's telling Tommel to, she'll set up the spell and then he hits the final key to send the blight into the city.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't want to do that. He's like, I could never do that. That's crazy. Like, and she says, how is hitting the final key different from writing the damn thing?
Yeah.
He says, how is sharpening a stick different from ramming it down a man's belly? It's like, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
That is a good point.
And then she counters with fighting for luxury is a Tyrannish thing. Isn't fighting for survival the Quen thing to do?
Ooh.
Yeah, that was a good quote too.
That was a good one.
And so, they kind of hash it out. She's like, look, either do it or don't do it. I'm not going to tell you what to do. And then she tells him that she wants to spend the night with him. And he's like, this is just a way for you to convince me to do it. He's like, I'm not going to do this spell. You're not going to use your womanly wiles on me to get me to do what you want. And she's like genuinely hurt. She's like, oh, like that's not what I meant at all. She's like, I'll just leave. And so she goes to leave, and then he turns her around and kisses her, and it was just a great scene. It was like everything finally coming to a head. And presumably they spend the night together and everything.
Yeah.
And so that was a great moment. But in between there, we get Siona being arrested. She showed everybody in the council room the mirror of like, this is actually what we're siphoning. And they tell her, it doesn't really matter because the Quen aren't people like you and I are people. And that was the moment where it's like, oh, holy shit. Like they really believe this. Like that's wild.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just a crazy moment where it's like, oh, none of these people can be saved.
No.
None of these people, like if they can knowingly do this, then
Yeah, there's no saving them.
Yeah. But so she unleashes this spell that like shows everybody in the city, anywhere where something is being siphoned and sent to a piece of technology, a window is getting opened up showing people where it's getting siphoned from. So then the question becomes, she has members of her family coming to her and saying, how dare you do this? Like, you've destroyed everything. Like, you've destroyed all of our lives by doing this, and you've turned the city into absolute chaos. Like, how could you do this? And I'm curious what you think of this moral dilemma, because it does it does open an interesting dilemma where she's like, you know, we were set to, you know, open a business, or I forget what it was, but you know,
Hmm.
we were getting ready to do this thing and you sending everything into chaos. Like, do you have any idea what that does for your aunt's shop, or do you have any idea what it does for like this person's business or whatever? Like, it's really interesting.
I would have to compare it to, I mean, you're okay with the things that are happening, the tragedies, the devastations, other people's lives being destroyed, ruined, because it makes your life comfortable. And now that your life isn't comfortable, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Um, it's just, yeah, it's going to throw it into chaos, but none of this should have been this way to begin with.
Right.
So it infuriated me. It would be
Yeah.
like a slave owner saying, what, I'm supposed to get rid of my slaves? Like, how am I supposed to live? And it's like, well, you should have been living this way in the first place.
Right.
So it's not my problem that now your cushy life isn't
Is
cushy
inconvenienced. Yeah.
anymore. And you're actually dealing with some hardships like the Quen have been stomped on for the hundreds of years now.
Right.
Yeah, so it was infuriating to me. Oh, I'm so sorry your life isn't cushy anymore and you can't take it, turn a blind eye to these atrocities to keep your life comfortable.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It was wild to see how much chaos it threw everything into, and I
Mhm.
wish that we had gotten an epilogue where we could see kind of what becomes of the city, like
Yes.
what happens.
Hmm.
Because, you know, with everybody dead who knew how to do this stuff, you know, hopefully it never comes back. And now they have this city, but it doesn't have a barrier anymore. It doesn't have any of the like big magical technology or anything. So it's like, what do they do with it? You know, what do they do with this city now?
I mean,
And
it would be interesting to see where they were like even a couple hundred years later. But my thought process would be that most of the Quen leave and try to go back to where they came from. You know what I mean? Because
yes,
if the blight, at least for now, won't happen because all the technology has been destroyed, I would think most of the Quen would try to go rebuild in some way outside of the city.
yeah,
But I don't know what would happen in the city. It would probably slowly rebuild, and then in a couple hundred years, you'd be back to having the blight again.
you think so?
I think so.
Mm,
I think history and life in general is very cyclical. You
yeah,
know, it's just, we're all on the wheel, like wheel of time,
right.
and I think sadly, eventually, like I don't think the knowledge would be lost. So I think it would come back.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it would be peace maybe for a little while until they figured it out again.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
somebody's going to want to do it. Somebody's going to be angry that their civilization was collapsed and want things back the way that they were. There was this really interesting, I've been doing a rewatch of Game of Thrones. It's just like a background show. And you saw Game of Thrones, obviously, right?
I've seen up through season like 3, I think.
Oh, so there's this one part where a priest is speaking to a queen and he's saying to her, like, the reason that you or feel off whenever you see like the poor is because it's a realization to you that without your finery and all of the um things that you have, your status, your guards, all of that, like that you would be that person without all of this. Because at the end of the day, we are all just human beings. And that's what bothers you about these people that you look down on, is because you could be them. And
Yeah,
that kind of was something I thought a lot about while I was reading this, is they hate the Quen because they know that it could have been reversed in some lifetime, and they could have been the Quen. And who wants that? Who wants to willingly be a Quen?
right.
So that was something I thought about a lot while reading this.
Yeah, for sure. Like the people inside the city were no different than the Quen. Like they
Mhm.
were like,
You're just native.
especially, yeah, and especially once you learn more about the Quen culture, they're not inherently different. Matter of fact, people in the city like might have been something like the Quen at one point.
Well, and
When
they
they,
bunch them all in as just Quen when they're all different tribes and
yes,
languages, and to be reduced to just outsiders,
right,
and all lumped in as the same is having your history erased.
right,
And this
yeah.
other terrible one forced on you.
Yeah. Well, even when she opens up that mirror, when she finally like understands what's going on, she opens up that mirror and the girl that she ends up siphoning has it said like dark black hair, like black hair,
Mhm.
and all the other Quen that have been around have kind of like a copper, like reddish hair. And so it's like, yeah, there's a whole world out there of like different people. Um,
Cultures, ideologies, all of
yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So, last couple of quotes is Tommel bent his head over the spellograph as he once had his longbow. I take that I might live. I take that I may one day give back. And it was cool, like just having this moment where he treats this moment of hitting this key really solemnly. Like he doesn't do it in anger. He doesn't do it for revenge. He
mhm.
sees it as a necessary thing, like he would when he was hunting,
Yeah.
and kind of giving respect to the hunted.
Hmm.
And so I thought that was really cool. And
Hmm.
then it also said, he realizes that he just killed Siona as well. And he says, Siona had been something new. She had brought summer to a frozen part of Tommel that should have died on the lake with his tribe. I thought that was a really great quote as well. And then we get Renthorn getting hit with the spellograph. um, and then Tommel activating the canister on the guard. Like she had him train a canister on his voice just in case.
Hmm.
And he just goes bang, and the guy's hand explodes. And
Yeah.
then all the other Quen come in and help him fight off the rest of the guards. That was really cool.
Yeah.
And they kind of make their way out of the city. And they push forward. Like there's so many of them that kind of join forces. And they make their way out, and they get outside, and he takes his first breath of like frozen air, and it feels like home.
Hmm.
And so that was great. And then my favorite is he's outside. They're like, okay, what do we do now? And kind of going back out into the world, and he kind of sees his friends in the stars. Like he sees his friends that died on the lake, and he sees Siona, and we kind of get this moment where like she looks at him and she says to hope, and then he says to hope, High Mage Freeman. And I'm like, that was just an excellent way to end the book. It was
Hmm.
just a really really good way to, I don't know. I like that it kind of leaves things ambiguous.
Hmm.
That all of this chaos is going, getting into final thoughts. I love that it kind of leaves all of this chaos happening behind them, but it's
Hmm.
not really their problem anymore. Like these
Hmm.
oppressed people are kind of out of it, and now the people that have been, perpetrating all this evil are now living behind them in the fires and the chaos
Hmm.
and the, everything. And so, we kind of talked about what we think happens from here. Um, but do you think there's potential for another book in this world, or do you think that it's kind of like a one-off story and it kind of stays there?
I don't know. I kind of think it is a one off. I kind of think it works best as a one off. As much as I would love like another one, the only thing like I can think of wouldn't like to find out what Tamil and his sister or niece do after wouldn't really
Like, how would that fill a whole book?
that and the whole first book is all about the spellograph and magic, and I feel like that wouldn't play a part at all in a second
Right.
book, so it's kind of pointless in a way. It's not really a theme that can be followed now.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, the only thing I could think of is if we went to like a different city, like maybe there's a different city in this world that like has their own like structure and like way of doing things.
Hmm.
That would also be like a standalone, but
Hmm.
in this world. Um, So that's the only thing I can think of, or maybe a prequel of them like erecting the barrier and like, starting the
Hmm.
city. But
Yeah.
other than that, I think it works well as a standalone. But I mean, let me tell you what, I'm gonna pick up whatever the next ML Wang book is.
Hmm.
Because if she keeps doing stuff like this,
Hmm.
then I'd be very interested in reading whatever her next book is.
Yeah.
Did you ever read The Sword of Kaigen?
I didn't. I haven't.
Okay, that's something that people have been suggesting to me for a while.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm just really not super into like Asian fantasy, like Asian inspired fantasy.
Hmm.
Like that kind of like that like setting, whether it be like in a video game or whatever, or like a TV show, like what's the one that came out? Not Shonen. What there was like a samurai show that came out recently. Um, you know, that kind of setting just never really appeals that much to me.
Hmm.
But I mean, if it's written as well as this book, then I may have to check it out
Yeah.
because I enjoyed this writing so much, and everybody loved Sword of Kaigen.
Yeah. I'll have to check
So
it out, see what the synopsis is like.
yeah. Um, as for other final thoughts, I don't know if I have too many. Like I gave my rating and everything. It does have a illustrated edition
Oh.
that you can buy from Wraithmarked. Um, but and I was about to order it, but personally I just didn't like the illustrations that much.
Hmm.
You can look them up online, look up Blood Over Brighthaven Kickstarter illustrated edition,
Hmm.
and you can look at the drawings and or the
Hmm.
whatever they are, and see if that kind of art fits with what you like.
Hmm.
But for me, I was just like, that's just not really how I picture it. That's not
Hmm.
really like I just wasn't jiving with the art. So I was like, I don't want to pay $100 to have this illustrated
Hmm.
edition where I'm not really like enjoying the art that much.
Yeah.
But I do want to get like the deluxe edition or whatever, where it's just like the normal cover with like red, paper edge color, whatever,
Yeah.
gilded edges,
The sprayed
um,
edges. Yeah.
sprayed edges, yeah. And so I do want to get that because, yeah, I think this was a fantastic book, and
Hmm.
I want to have it on my shelf,
Yeah.
and I really think it's going to end up in my top five, like unless something else knocks it off. I just had a really good time with
Hmm.
this book, I think. So, yeah. Any other final thoughts from you?
Trying to think, did I say everything? No,
What?
I think I kind of got everything out. I think we kind of went through everything. I enjoyed the book. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. I liked
Yeah.
it. It was interesting. It had a great plot. It never slowed down. And for especially a standalone, which isn't something I'm usually drawn to, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. For ML Wang's next book, is there specific things from this book that you would like to see in her next book? Like for me, it's like the magic system. Like having, I had shown this book to a friend, and they read it, and they were like, I don't think I've ever seen a book where the magic system is part of the world. Like it's like the reason for the world being the way it is because magic system.
Hmm.
And the only other time that I've seen that happen is something like Mistborn.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that's kind of what I would want from the second book is whatever the magic system is, I want that to deeply impact the world.
Yeah, I mean, I liked your idea of the prequel. I'd love to see how all of it came to be in the first place.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. What about was there specific like themes or anything that you would like to see carried over even if her next book isn't in this world, like, is there any like specific like bullet points or like themes or anything that you'd like to see in the next one?
I mean, I love a against all odds kind of book. I love a book where you find out that the people you've looked up to your whole life are actually terrible people and have done terrible things. I kind of like those earth-shattering moments. So maybe something like that.
Sure. Cool. Well, I think that's kind of the end of it for today. And yeah, definitely highly recommend this book. If you've made it this far into the video, then, hopefully you do too. If you, maybe if you didn't like this book, then let us know in the comments. I would love to hear from people who this book didn't work for. So definitely let us know down there. But we are going to wrap it up there for today, folks. So again, as always, our links are in the description. You got Twitter, you got Discord, you got Patreon, where you can watch these episodes live as we record them, way ahead of like when people on YouTube get it. So definitely check that out. We got some really cool episodes coming up. I think we talked about this backstage before, but we have an episode coming up with the lovely Bookborn to talk about some Harry Potter and Dungeon Crawler Carl. She wants to talk about Dungeon Crawler Carl. So she'll be on to talk about those things. That'll kind of be a mix between Creators Corner and a Potter Watch episode. So keep an eye out for that. And then we have the one and only Felix Blackwell coming on to talk about his books, Stolen Tongues and Church Beneath the Roots. He is an author that we've been a fan of, and we were fortunate enough that he reached out to us. So he'll be coming on for a hangout and a chat. So keep an eye out for those videos coming soon. And then we were also talking about starting the Farseer trilogy and Red Rising. So if you guys like those series, then let us know down below. Let us know which ones you're more excited to see, and we'll do that at some point, as well as some end of the series Dungeon Crawler Carl content. So we got a lot of stuff coming up for you guys. So hit subscribe, hit like if you want to be there for it, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks, everybody. Bye.